When we look at a scene with our own eyes, we naturally take in the entire picture. Every tree, every blade of grass, every cloud in the sky. But in photography, what we see isn't always what works. When the camera captures everything, it can lead to busy, cluttered images that lack focus. So in today's video, I'm discussing how working in a negative way can really help to simplify your photography process. Now, I'm not talking about taking a negative approach to photography, definitely not. This channel is all about positivity and the art of creating photos. What I'm talking about is how to approach taking an image when we're faced with a whole scene in front of us, when we're looking at absolutely everything. How do we make that into a photo? So, by the way, welcome to the west coast of Wales, where we're hopefully taking some landscape photographs today in some rather blustery conditions, it has to be said. So I do apologise if we get some wind noise in the microphone, but I'll do my best to try and shelter it. I think the technique that I want to be talking about today can be applied to any genre of photography, from portraits right through to still life images. So when you think about it, the photo is already there, isn't it? When we raise our camera and lens of choice, essentially what we're doing is removing parts of the scene that already exist. So having this mindset to start with can really help to piece together an image. So I think photography is often described as the art of selection. Unlike painting, where you can add elements to a blank canvas, photography starts with everything in front of you. The challenge lies in narrowing it down to the essentials. Subtraction is about simplifying the scene to guide the viewer's eye towards the subject, removing anything that competes for attention or detracts from the story that you're trying to tell. So this area is absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure there is a photograph to be had here, but there's lots going on. So many different elements. We've got these picnic tables in the foreground, there's a wall that runs right through the middle of the composition. Beyond that, we've got a beach and some rocky shoreline, and then there's a white cottage over on the far right hand side of the bay. There's some boats out in the ocean. Yes, so many things to look at. But it's about taking away most of those things to try to make a compelling image, and that's what we're going to be trying to do. Now, I think we need to get rid of the bridge. That doesn't need to be in the composition. This big expanse of grass here is going to detract from the image. That also doesn't really need to be in the composition. So I think by moving forward, somewhere like this is going to really help. Maybe move to the right a bit. Try to get the archway to balance with the cottage, and use maybe a tighter focal length so we can crop out some of these edges of the frame as well, and really concentrate on this middle area here. So eliminating a lot from the composition to hopefully make something that tells a story of this beautiful place. I think the human brain is great at filtering out distractions and focusing on what interests us, but a camera doesn't have that luxury. Everything in the frame is given equal weight. It's our job to make sure the focus is on the right things. I think the best way to practice the art of subtraction is to slow down and take a step back and just observe. I try to find a point of interest, but I also look at what I can exclude. I try to pay attention to elements that feel unnecessary or cluttered. But now I've worked this scene for probably about 20 minutes, and it's been quite challenging because the light is not ideal, I think, for the composition. So the archway is kind of on the left and the cottage is on the right, so we've got that diagonal flow through the image, which I think works quite well. But yeah, I think the main issue right now is the light. As you can see, it's right behind me, and it's probably my least favoured lighting situation. I much prefer if it's coming from the side or anywhere but behind, basically, because everything is being illuminated by that one constant light source, and you tend to get quite flat looking images. So yeah, maybe later on this evening it might work better. So maybe if I don't find anything down the coastal path later, maybe we'll come back and retake this shot and see how it looks in better lighting conditions, and maybe some more drama and mood in the sky. I think it definitely needs something. Now, of course, I could have simplified that scene even more. I could have moved the other side of the wall, in front of the wall, and just taken a shot of the cove and the cottage. But I think with the very flat sky and the very even lighting, it perhaps would have been just a little bit too boring. But anyway, I'm really excited to see whilst up this coastal path. I've never been up this way before, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can find this evening. Forecast is for a good sunset, so let's keep our fingers crossed. I was looking through my YouTube analytics the other day, which is not something I do that often. It's a rabbit hole that doesn't do you any favours, I've found out. But what really surprised me was that 65% of people that watch my channel are not subscribed, which is, well, it just blew my mind, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, I think it's probably because I never ask people to do it. I always feel a bit uncomfortable asking people to do things. But if you do subscribe, basically it really helps my channel. It really helps me to reach new people. So if you do enjoy my videos and you'd like to be notified when I upload, please hit that subscribe button, because it really does help out channels such as mine grow and reach new people. So yeah, thanks in advance. So I think the light has improved a little bit, but I haven't found anything that's really caught my eye just as yet. Now, this area here was an Iron Age hill fort, which is quite interesting. There's a few indentations back there that were obviously excavated at some point. And I think I'm going to take a little bit of shelter, a little bit of refuge in those excavations to talk about a few of the points about simplifying your images. Oh my word, what a day. So yeah, it's a little bit more sheltered down here in this dip. So I think one of the easiest ways of simplifying or removing distractions in your scene is simply by moving and zooming. So I'll spin you around and I'll show you an example. Not a particularly pleasant one, but yeah, it's an example. So we've got this rather boring scene in front of us, and there's some horse poop down here, which is not particularly pleasant, is it? But if I moved back and then zoomed in, I'll be able to eliminate that and still have a similar framing. I'd just basically eliminate the rather disgusting distraction. So another simple way of removing things from your scene is by using the shallow depth of field. So say if you shot at f2.8 and got very close to your subject, you could create that very shallow depth of field, so you've got separation there, so maybe your foreground and your background is completely blurred, just isolating your subject, giving your whole image a completely different feel. Another one would be to use negative space. So if you filled a lot of your frame with negative space, like the sky or maybe the ocean, you'd be able to isolate a subject and keep a very clean, minimal looking frame. That's something I do quite a lot. So another way of removing unwanted things in your scene is by converting your image to black and white. So say if you've got a lot of bold colours that are very, very distracting and you want to remove them, a great way of doing that is just, yeah, literally going for a mono composition. Black and white can solve a lot of issues. Oh man, this wind. Right, I think it's time to head back down the path and see if we can make a composition at this spot that I thought might work if we got some nice light. The light does seem to be improving. And using light and shadow is actually another good way of removing unwanted things from your scene. So you could hide some distractions in the shadows, or, you know, because your eye is drawn to bright light, you could enhance those areas, you know, eliminating things that perhaps the eye would otherwise be drawn towards, if you like. So maybe some dodging and burning in post-production. And speaking about light, I've written a 30-page guidebook on how I use, oh my God, this is so boggy, how I use light in the landscape. Yeah, you can get it for free. There's a link down in the video description. Oh wow, this is so boggy. So I've had to work really quick here. I've just threw my bag down, got the camera on the tripod, and I'm doing a panorama of this bay here. Now, we've got this wonderful ice bow, if you like, crystals in the sky, being illuminated by the sun, some dramatic clouds sweeping through. Yeah, and you really get the sense of how windy it is by this composition. And I think, like I mentioned before, you know, when you want to simplify a scene, a good way to do it is by using black and white. When you strip the image of colour, you really help to reduce actually what's in the image and just concentrate on the textures and the light and the shadows. And I think that's what I'm going for here. I've took 6 images through this bay here, And yeah, I'm not really going to be focusing too much on the landscape itself, more about the sky and yeah, what we've got going on up there. It looks great actually when I look at the separate images here on the camera, but I don't know how well it's going to stitch together. The wind is blowing my tripod all over the place, so it'll be really interesting to see. Fingers crossed it comes out. So I really hope that last image worked out. Very, very difficult to see on the LCD, you know, shooting straight towards the light. All of the cliff edges were very, very dark. Struggling to get my focus right. It was quite challenging. So yeah, hopefully it worked out. I hope it did. But the light right now is absolutely stunning. Absolutely beautiful. Some lovely golden light hitting the cliffs in front of me. However, I don't have a composition just as yet. But we are heading back towards that cottage. I really hope I can make something else tonight. We've only got probably 15 minutes until that sun dips behind the horizon, probably not even that looking at it. So yeah, time to get a wiggle on. So after a brisk walk back to the cottage, the light still hadn't improved. The scene looked flat and not much better than before. I did set up my tripod, but looking back, that was probably wishful thinking. So maybe it's one to revisit later in the year, because I do think the scene has some potential. But anyway, back to subtraction. The next time you're out with your camera, try this. Start with the whole scene and then ask yourself, what can I remove to make this stronger? Because I've found this approach makes photography so much easier. So it's time to wrap the video up. I do hope you enjoyed it. There's another video at the top there. If you did, you might find that one enjoyable as well. And why not take a look at my free guidebook on light, which is linked up there and also down in the video description. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I do hope to see you all again next week. Take care.